The first time I realized my marriage was a beautifully wrapped empty box was on my 35th birthday. My husband Kyle gave me a state-of-the-art, professional-grade vacuum cleaner. "It's what you wanted, right?" he'd said, beaming with pride as I stood there in my ratty bathrobe, holding the damn thing. "You're always complaining about the old one not having enough suction." I'd asked for a weekend away. Just the two of us. No kids, no work emails, no leaking faucets. I'd wanted to feel like his wife again, not just the live-in maid and nanny. "Yeah, Kyle," I'd said, my voice flat. "It's perfect. Thanks." That was the problem. I'd become so good at pretending, at swallowing my disappointment, and painting on a smile, that he genuinely believed it. He worked long hours as a mid-level project manager, and I managed the entire universe of our home. Our two kids, Lily 8 and Noah 6, were my sun and moon, but the gravitational pull of their needs was constant, exhausting. I was a domestic engineer, a title that sounded cute on a mug but felt like a prison sentence on the bad days. The days when the laundry mountain was insurmountable, when someone was always screaming, when the only adult conversation I had was with the grocery store cashier. My best friend Chloe was my lifeline. "He gave you a vacuum?" she'd shrieked over the phone later that day. "Jenna, I'm sorry, but that's a new level of clueless. You need to talk to him." But talking to Kyle was like talking to a brick wall that occasionally grunted and scrolled through ESPN. He'd listen, nod, say "I hear you, babe," and then nothing would change. He helped when I asked, which meant I was still the CEO of our household, just delegating tasks to a reluctant, incompetent intern. The breaking point, the moment the dam finally cracked, was a Tuesday. It was always a Tuesday. I'd been up since 5 a.m. with Noah, who had a nightmare. I'd gotten Lily ready for school, packed lunches, unclogged the toilet, dealt with a work call from my freelance graphic design client, while simultaneously scrubbing dried spaghetti sauce off the wall, and folded 3 loads of laundry. My lunch break was scarfing down Noah's leftover fish sticks while standing over the sink. Kyle waltzed in at 6 p.m., dropped his briefcase by the door, and kissed my cheek. "Rough day at the office. What's for dinner?" I looked at him. I really looked at him. He had a tiny splatter of someone else's lunch on his tie. He'd been out to eat. I'd been eating cold, soggy fish sticks. "There's leftover casserole," I said, my voice dangerously calm. He made a face. Again? I was hoping for something fresh. Something in me snapped. It wasn't a loud snap. It was a quiet, internal click, like the final turn of a lock. "The grocery store is fresh out of fresh, Kyle," I said, turning back to the dishes. "You should have called." He sighed, the long-suffering sigh of a man who believes he carries the weight of the world. "You know I'm busy, Jen. You're the one who's good at that stuff." That stuff. The stuff that kept our children alive, and our lives running. That stuff. That night, after the kids were in bed and Kyle was snoring on the couch, I did something I hadn't done in years. I opened my laptop, and I didn't look at parenting blogs or Pinterest recipes. I went to my old freelance profiles. My portfolio, once vibrant with my work, was a digital ghost town. The last update was 5 years ago, before Noah was born. I'd been good, really good. I'd had a promising career before I'd opted out to raise our family. It was what we'd decided together. It had made financial sense at the time. But now, looking at my dormant talent, I felt a grief so profound, it stole my breath. I hadn't just put my career on hold, I'd buried it. A new kind of resolve, cold and sharp, began to form. Revenge, for me, wasn't about hurting Kyle. It was about reclaiming the woman he'd forgotten existed. The one who could do more than just vacuum. The plan started small, a secret seed planted in the dark soil of my resentment. I reached out to an old client, Sarah, who ran a small boutique marketing firm. "Jenna, oh my God, it's so good to hear from you," she'd said when I called, my heart hammering against my ribs. "I'm thinking about dipping my toes back in," I said, trying to sound casual. "Just a project or two. Something I can do after the kids are in bed." "Are you kidding? I'd kill to have you back. I've got a nightmare client who needs a complete brand overhaul. Their current look is a tragedy. I can only pay a flat fee though, $5,000. It's not much, but I'll take it," I said, cutting her off. $5,000. For my work. For my brain. It felt like a fortune. I became a ghost in my own home. During the day, I was mom. I did the school run, I made the meals, I kissed the boo-boos. But at night, after the last bedtime story was read and the house was quiet, I came alive. I'd brew a pot of coffee, open my laptop at the kitchen table, and lose myself in colors and vectors and design concepts. It was my secret life, my rebellion. Kyle didn't notice a thing. He'd pat my shoulder as he headed to bed. Don't stay up too late on Facebook, babe. I'd just smile. I won't. The $5,000 hit my PayPal account, an account Kyle didn't know existed. I transferred it to a new, separate bank account I'd opened at a different bank. I called it the Freedom Fund. It wasn't enough to leave, not by a long shot. But it was a start. The project was a smash. The client loved it. Sarah was ecstatic. She sent me 2 more projects. My Freedom Fund grew to $15,000. The work was exhausting, layering a full-time job on top of my existing full-time job. But it filled a hole in me I hadn't even known was there. I was thinking about typography and color theory, about client needs and marketing strategy. I wasn't just thinking about what to make for dinner. But the double life was taking its toll. I was constantly tired. I snapped at the kids more. I was short with Kyle. He noticed my irritability, but he diagnosed it incorrectly. "You need to relax, Jen," he said one Saturday, finding me staring blankly at a pile of laundry. "You're always so stressed. Maybe you should join a yoga class or something." He didn't get it. The problem wasn't the laundry. The problem was the cage. The big break came from an unexpected place. Sarah's firm landed a massive account, a new, eco-friendly sports drink company, looking for a complete brand identity. The budget was substantial. "It's too big for me to handle alone," Sarah told me over coffee. "I need a partner, a creative director. I want it to be you, Jenna. Full-time, a salary, benefits, the whole deal. We can work remotely most of the time, but we'll need to be in the city for client meetings." My heart soared, then immediately crashed. A full-time job. How? With the kids? With Kyle? "What's the salary?" I asked, my mouth dry. She named a figure that made me choke on my latte. It was more than Kyle made. I told her I needed to think about it. I drove home in a daze. This was it. This was the key to the cage. But using it would mean blowing up my entire life. That night, I did the math. With that salary, I could afford a small apartment. I could afford childcare. I wouldn't be trapped anymore. The fear was paralyzing, but the alternative, another 20 years of this slow, soul-crushing existence, was worse. I decided I wouldn't tell Kyle, not until I had everything in place. The job was set to start in 3 months. That was my deadline. I became a master strategist. I used my Freedom Fund to hire a lawyer, a sharp woman named Linda, for a confidential consultation. I wanted to know my rights, what a divorce would look like. I opened a P.O. box for all the legal documents. I started secretly researching apartments and preschools near Sarah's office. I was a spy in the House of Love, and my mission was my own liberation. The strain was immense. The lies piled up. "I'm going to the library with the kids," I'd say, then meet with a realtor. "I have a doctor's appointment," I'd say, then go sign paperwork at my new bank. The guilt was a constant, gnawing companion, but I'd look at Kyle, oblivious on the couch, and the guilt would harden back into resolve. 2 weeks before I was set to start the new job, the bomb dropped. It was a Sunday. Lily was at a friend's house. Noah was building a Lego fortress in the living room. Kyle was scrolling on his phone. "Hey," he said, not looking up. "My mom called. She wants to come visit for a week next month. You'll need to get the guest room ready." It was the way he said it. "You'll need to," not "we." Not "can we talk about this." Just another task for his personal assistant. I was standing at the kitchen island, looking over a design mock-up on my tablet. I closed the cover. My hands were steady. "No," I said. He looked up, confused. "What?" I said no. "Your mother is not coming to stay for a week. Not next month. Not ever again. If I can help it." He laughed. A short, dismissive sound. "Come on, Jenna. Don't be difficult. You know she expects it." "I don't care what she expects," I said, my voice low and clear. "I am not spending a week waiting on her, listening to her criticize my parenting and my housekeeping. I'm done." His face darkened. "What is your problem lately? You've been a nightmare to live with. You're moody. You're distracted. Is this about that vacuum?" "For God's sake," I said I was sorry. "This has nothing to do with the vacuum, Kyle," I said, a sad smile touching my lips. "This has to do with everything that came before it and everything that's come after. I'm not your problem. I'm your wife. Or at least I was." He stood up, his phone forgotten. "What is that supposed to mean?" "It means I'm leaving you." The words hung in the air, simple and absolute. Noah looked up from his Legos, his little face worried. "Mommy?" "It's okay, sweetie," I said, my voice softening for him. "Daddy and I are just talking." Kyle stared at me, his expression shifting from anger to disbelief. "You're what? You're not serious. Leave and go where? Do what? You have no money, Jenna. No job." And there it was, the core of his perception of me. Helpless. Dependent. His, actually, I said, picking up my tablet. I opened it and turned it around to show him the mock-up for the sports drink campaign. It was vibrant, bold, professional. I start my new job as creative director in 2 weeks. The salary is $92,000 a year. His jaw dropped. He looked from the screen to my face and back again. What is this? Since when? Since 3 months ago. I've been freelancing. I've already saved $20,000 in my own account. I've retained a lawyer. I've found an apartment. I listed my preparations calmly, like I was reading a grocery list. Each item was another nail in the coffin of our marriage. The color drained from his face. He looked scared. For the first time, he was looking at me not as his wife, but as a separate, unpredictable person with her own power. He had no idea who I was. You did all this behind my back? He whispered, his voice hoarse. You left me no other choice, I said. You stopped seeing me years ago, so I had to start seeing myself. The next 2 weeks were a special kind of hell. Kyle cycled through rage, pleading, and cold silence. He called me selfish. He said I was breaking up our family. He told his mother, who called me sobbing, asking how I could do this to her son. But I held my ground. The woman who would have crumbled under that pressure was gone. She'd been replaced by someone with a bank account, a career, and a backbone. The day I moved out was the hardest of my life. Telling Lily and Noah was agony. I sat them down and used all the carefully rehearsed, therapist-approved language about how Mommy and Daddy loved them very much but couldn't live together anymore. Lily cried. Noah just looked confused. It shattered my heart into a million pieces. This was the sacrifice. Their stable, 2-parent home was the price of my freedom. But I also knew, deep in my soul, that a home with a resentful, invisible mother wasn't stable. It was a lie. I moved into my small 2-bedroom apartment. It was cramped and smelled faintly of the previous tenant's curry, but it was mine. The first night, after I'd put the kids to bed in their new shared room, I sat on my secondhand sofa and cried. I cried for the dream that had died. I cried for the pain I'd caused my children. But I also cried with relief. The silence in that apartment was my own. No one was going to ask me what was for dinner. The divorce proceedings were brutal. Kyle fought me on everything, from the custody schedule to the division of our assets. He couldn't stand that I was no longer under his control. But I had Linda, my pit bull of a lawyer, and I had my own income. I was no longer a dependent spouse, begging for alimony. I was an equal party. A year later, it was final. We had 50-50 custody. The sale of the house was split down the middle. I was free. My new job was challenging and exhilarating. I was using my brain, collaborating with a team, being valued for my ideas. I was good at it. I got a promotion and a raise within the first 8 months. One evening, I was picking up the kids from Kyle's. He'd moved into a sterile-looking condo. He answered the door, and he looked tired. Older. The house, once my domain, had been a mess behind him. Hey guys, I said, smiling at Lily and Noah as they barreled past me with their backpacks. Kyle looked at me. I was wearing a blazer from my meeting with a client. I had my own life, my own confidence. You look good, Jenna, he said. And for the first time, it sounded like genuine respect, not a hollow compliment. Thanks, Kyle, I said. I feel good. I drove my kids back to our apartment. We ordered pizza and ate it on the floor, watching a movie. It wasn't perfect. There were still struggles, still moments of guilt and sadness. But it was real. It was us. My revenge wasn't dramatic. There was no big public showdown. It was quiet. It was in the quiet satisfaction of paying my own bills. It was in the look on my daughter's face when she told her friends, "My mom is a creative director." It was in the peace I felt at the end of a long day, in my own space, with my own life. I had sacrificed the illusion of a perfect family to gain my own soul. And as I tucked my children into bed, in the home I had built for us, I knew it was a trade I would make every single time.